Tired of guessing what scales to play? You've learned the modes and every other scale under the sun, but has anyone actually explained how to apply them?
Why is it so hard?
I've been playing guitar for over 20 years and teaching for more than a decade. And if there's one thing I've seen over and over again, it's this. Players work hard learning scales and modes, but when it comes time to solo, they still feel lost. So in today's video, I will be explaining every single thing that has to do with chord scales. And I will provide you with the ultimate reference guide to chord scales, absolutely free. Right, so specifically, we're going to be breaking everything down into what chord scales are, how to build and apply them, and when this method works. So if you've ever wondered how to solo through chord changes without sounding random, this is the tool you're looking for. Part 1. What are chord scales? A chord scale is simply a scale that outlines or contains all the notes of a specific chord, often with a few extra color tones to give the character. Let's take the C major 7 chord. The chord tones are 1, 3, 5, and 7, and that's more than enough information to know exactly what we're looking for within a scale. One scale that contains all of those notes is C Ionian, in other words, the major scale. So in this case, the chord is C major 7 and the chord scale is C Ionian. You can also grab any other scale that contains the notes of the C major 7 chord. Now the reason this works is because of the construction in both the chord and the scale. The chord has a construction of 1, 3, 5, and 7, while the scale has a construction of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You can clearly see the 1, 3, 5, 7 degrees of the chord within the C major scale. Now another example of a scale that contains these degrees are C Lydian and C harmonic major. Let's take a quick look at their construction. C Lydian has a construction of 1, 2, 3, sharp 4, 5, 6, and 7. You can clearly see the chord tones of 1, 3, 5, and 7. While C harmonic major has a construction of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, flat 6, and 7. Again, you can clearly see the chord tones of 1, 3, 5, and 7. So you can play any of these scales over the top of that C major 7 chord. You can even combine these together to grab a couple of different spice notes here and there. The idea here is to build your soloing vocabulary directly from the chord, not just the key. That means every chord can have its own scale, giving you more precise, colorful lines. Now finally, the more notes a chord has, the more specific the scale you can play over it. I'll give you a very specific example. You take a huge chord like a C major 13 sharp 11, there's 7 notes in that chord. You have 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, sharp 11, and 13. And there's a perfect scale for that. If you look at the Lydian scale, you have 1, 2, 3, sharp 4, 5, 6, and 7. If you translate the 9 as a 2, the sharp 11 as a sharp 4, and the 13 as a 6, it's literally the Lydian scale as a chord. No other scale will fit quite this perfectly over that one specific chord. Part 2 is how to apply chord scales. We've already looked at the scale construction and the chord construction. You can think about it like this. A chord is just a small slice of a scale. When you solo, you can use the entire scale as long as it clearly contains the chord tones. Let's take a cliché chord progression like a 2-5-1 in C. The chords are going to be D minor 7, G7, and C major 7. This lick from my book 100 Modern Fusion Licks uses exactly the chord scale relationship to grab in some scales and apply them. So over the D minor 7, we're going to be playing D Dorian, which fits perfectly against the D minor 7. Against the G7, we're going to be doing Mixolydian and a little bit of altered. So we're using a scale that fits perfectly and one that creates a little bit more tension. And then we're going to be using the C major scale against the C major 7. I'll show you another example that works perfectly well against this chord progression. We're going to be using D Dorian flat 2, which is the second mode from melodic minor, and it works perfectly over a D minor 7, but already starts adding a little bit more spice than your typical Dorian. We're going to be using G Phrygian dominant over the top of the G7 chord, and this is the 5th mode of harmonic minor. Traditionally, this scale is used more over minor type of chord progression, but we're using it in a major type of 2-5-1, and finally we're resolving into C Lydian against the C major scale. And here we can clearly see the relationship between each of these chords and the particular scales that we chose to play. With the chord scale concept, you're playing notes custom fit to each chord. This is huge in jazz and fusion and prog, where chords can change fast and often. Now, a quick pro tip, even inside the scale, emphasize the chord tones. Land on the third, the seventh, the fifth, the tonic, and it's gonna make things sound a lot more cohesive. The final result is a line that's melodic connected and harmonically rich. Part 3, when chord scale work and when they don't. Now, this system is incredibly powerful, but it's not always the best approach. Let me explain. They work great if you're playing against jazz standards, fusion chord progressions, any type of more progressive kind of music or more modern kind of music. When they don't work so well is when you have simpler pop or rock progressions. You can add a little bit of flair here and there, but it's definitely not a good idea to use this as your main go-to approach. And finally, when all the chords are clearly in one key. Here's where the key center approach makes more sense. I will be doing a full-on video on just the key center approach, so keep an eye out for that one. All right, now that you know how chord scales work, it's just a matter of learning the chord and scale formulas and seeing how they sound together. To make things a lot simpler, I've compiled all the main parent scales and their modes along with the pentatonic scale and some different symmetrical scales to make the ultimate guide to chord scales. If you want a free, full guide just packed full of information with just about every scale out there and how to apply it as a chord scale, look no further than the link in the description box. Find the scale name, scale formula alongside the chords it works with, from triad to full-blown 13th chord. It's definitely the ultimate guide to chord scales. All right, thank you so much for watching. Take care and keep practicing.